Welcome in, everyone, to a special edition of Late Night with the Borg. Brendan had a good friend's birthday party. It sounds like the festivities were going into late into the evening here, so you guys are stuck with me tonight. Apologize for the late notice as well. Had some troubles. I think it's the second or third time I've done this, Zach, and this is the second or third time I've had issues getting everything set up for you. So I apologize. How are you doing today?
I had some issues myself too with my cameras. I'm still having issues technically down in the den here, so we're all getting there.
It's my college degree falling off the wall. Don't mind that. Anyhow,
It's only the conference opener.
Right. Go ahead and pay some bills here quick. As always, this late night show, we gotta say thank you to Kubota Dealers of South Dakota, title sponsor for Jackrabbit Illustrated content again this year. Don't forget, I know it was a miserable 80 degrees past couple of days, but we're gonna have snow flying soon, so get to your Kubota Dealers of South Dakota, get your maintenance done. I want to say thank you to Dreamers Do Travels. They've been an awesome new sponsor of us this year. You got any sort of big trips planned, especially I know they do a lot of Disney. If you're doing that sort of thing, go ahead and reach out to Brian and Amy Dix. They do a wonderful job over there. Need to say thank you to Innovative Engineering. They're your residential and commercial HVAC and plumbing specialists. You got a new outbuilding, new house project, or any other sort of even retail building, you got something going up, reach out to those guys. They help you out there. And last but certainly not least, we are proud to partner with the Jackrabbit Formers Players Association and Wooden Legs Brewery. There's not any specific reason that we definitely have been told we can't say that those are partnered together when it comes to proceeds from a beverage. But thank you all for drinking all of that beverage, and we're looking forward to doing it again this year and continue to support the other awesome pizzas, brews, all that sort of good stuff they got over there at Wooden Legs. Now with that, you get a chance to watch much of the game, I assume, so I thought I'd seen you maybe gone to the Stampede game for a bit there. But
yeah, I did catch the home opener. I was also with my wife and son. We were also very interestedly watching the Jackrabbit game on our phones as well, and keeping abreast with some other goings on around the valley. Obviously, the NDSU game was pretty close for a while as well. There was a lot of interesting stuff happening around college football. I haven't actually checked. I just saw the Montana game. I don't know if that's gone final yet either.
Yep, I just watched the end of that about 30 minutes ago. So
that was a pretty update myself here as I'm checking on my phone as well as I also have a computer. But yeah, very certainly a couple of the interesting time slots we had for those late games with Youngstown, SDSU, and NDSU and Illinois State, and obviously I see Montana pulling out that 4-point win over Idaho State. Bit of a tough day for the top teams. They got the wins, but not necessarily easily done, to say the least. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot, I'm sure, for Jackrabbit fans to stew on tonight, but I think you do have to maybe say it's a good sign for the Valley that we're seeing some teams like Youngstown and Illinois be able to compete and win with room to improve. I think that's a good point from Damien. First of all, I mean, you do have to give some credit where credit's due. I mentioned this during the game. Thought it kind of reminded me last year of obviously we get a USD post here. Reminded me a little of last year when USD went to Youngstown and got down 14-0 and looked kind of weak in the first half, but then kind of dominated the second half, and that's more or less what SDSU did. I know Youngstown got back to within a touchdown twice in that fourth quarter, but just kind of felt like the Jacks kind of woke up, made some adjustments in the second half, and really a very different game in the second half. Biggest difference I think you saw was in both teams' run games. Obviously, the quarterback for Youngstown, a very difficult guy to kind of scheme against. He's only, I think, 5'9" is the height they give on on the media guide or whatever, Brungard it, but he is a.
I thought he was 5'11" or maybe 6 foot. I know at media day, I'm not short, but I'm not tall either.
I'm gonna look that up now.
I'm 6'1", and he was kind of looking up to me a little bit when we talked.
No, I didn't go. I didn't get a chance to go to the media day for the Valley, but I'll be going to the Summit League basketball media day here on Tuesday. Which, oh, by the way, basketball season's coming right around the corner. As if that's not it.
Wrestling practice officially starts Monday. So
yep, and we got like I said, the Summit League basketball media day here. I mean, yeah, Bo Brungard. Pulling up his bio page. Didn't realize his dad was actually a Hall of Famer at Youngstown State too, Mark.
Yep, they had the ads where they were doing all those callbacks.
Yep, so obviously
Youngstown broadcast. I think my biggest takeaway, get some other comments in here. Zach McKinnell from Blue Buds, SI. Once Jack's finally committed to running the ball, it changed the game. Not sure why they didn't lean on Loffridge earlier. I thought that was odd. In the first quarter they attempted 2 runs was all, and Loffridge about broke one, and the other one was kind of dead on arrival because Hagan missed a block, and they just didn't really try it other than anything else. And then Jordan Fink here. It's good to see the Jacks overcome 14-point deficit and confidence-building win. You touched on some of it, Zach, but I think that was my big takeaway is I was very pleased and impressed with as good as as poor as I should say as the first half even really went. I was happy they overcame that, and I was almost personally more disappointed they kind of played with their food a little bit. They came back, they got up 28-17, and there were several drives there. They had the
28-17, actually, yeah.
Yeah, but not what I said. That's what I meant. I apologize. They had the chance to put the nail in the coffin, and whether it was a little bit play calling or just execution or both. Obviously, the two often go hand in hand. They just didn't. And it never really felt like after that point Youngstown really had a realistic chance. But, you talk about a good team versus an elite team. That's what, obviously, they're the measuring stick. That's what NDSU did tonight, right? They had a similar situation. They got down early on the road, and they came back, and they took the lead. And then when it mattered, they put the game away. They got up 2 scores. They were up 33-18 ended up being the final, I believe.
Yeah, 33-16. I know they
were up 18-16 because there was a save.
18-16 for a while in that game, and then they put the 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to kind of put it out of reach. Just kind of wore them down a little bit. I mean, they're defensively they seem to be playing kind of on another level, even though this wasn't necessarily their best offensive night. But I think. Go ahead.
I was going to say I just wish that's what we would have seen at SDSU tonight. That was my big thing, and I get you're playing some of the prevent defense on that last 2 drives there, in part because if they are going to score, we're going to tackle them in bounds and we're going to make sure they kill some clock, right? But at the same time, it's called the prevent defense because it prevents you from stopping them, in my opinion. But we don't need to go down that road necessarily. We'll keep talking about the Jacks game a little bit here before we get too much of the national stuff.
Yeah, the rest of the college scene. No, I think the committing to the run part was very. I mean, Loffridge. I think it was interesting. I can't quite pull up the first. I've got some stat comparisons here because I pulled up the. It doesn't have the individual stats, but I remember looking at halftime. And I think Chase Mason was actually the leading rusher, and that's mainly because he had that 34-yard run. I think that helped set up their first touchdown. But, yeah, they really didn't do a whole lot with Loffridge in the first half. And, I mean, you can look at where the game really turned around. I mean, that first half, SDSU only ran for 72 yards, and you also had Youngstown going for 139. Now, obviously, I know Brungard had a big 70-some-yard run, I think, in that half.
Matt Zimmer had a tweet. He had 120-some-odd at the end of the first half.
Yeah.
And he finished the game with 130, but just to show the halftime adjustments and stuff, I think they made.
Yep.
There's at one point headed into the fourth quarter, he was at 103.
Yeah, I mean, the second half, different story. SDSU ends up rushing for 129 yards, and all you get from Youngstown is 27 total. So, some of that, a little bit of that is a little deceptive because obviously by the fourth quarter, when it's, and especially toward the end of the game, obviously all Youngstown can do is pass, but nonetheless, very good. I think, again, there was a similar dynamic I saw a year ago because, again, I watched both games a little more closely. Last year was when Youngstown kind of had a similar thing when USD came to town. They had a big first half, but they were it was a lot of the running of Brungard. Halftime, the better, more physical team kind of adjusted, ran the football down their throat, and was able to kind of figure out how to contain this mobile quarterback. And that kind of happened again. Now, the part here that was a little weird is they just couldn't quite put him away in that fourth quarter, where especially when it was 28-17, you really thought, okay, this thing's going to be
even get a field goal on one of these drives, and you feel really good about it. 14 points. You don't see Youngstown making a game out of it.
And you're also, the onside kick was a little bit nerve-wracking there, too, when it's 35-30,
Anything can happen in that situation. They played it right. Bullock did the smart thing and batted it out of bounds, which is illegal batting because the ball was in flight on a kick. Just if rules nerd as a high school white hat, obviously.
And obviously, beyond Lothridge, I think you have to obviously look at Bullock, who, he probably give him the star of the game, I would say, at this point. I guess it's kind of a tough one to award, but he was,
Chase had 14 completions for 190 yards. Do you know Bullock's stat line?
Well, I am cheating because I do have it directly in front of me. But let's just, for the people out there, let's just say if you're a math major, I would say he had about 80 to 90% of those completions.
Yeah. 10 catches for 160 yards. So, it was good to have
51. Yeah, he was just doing he did everything but basically drive the bus today in the passing game. It's a shame he didn't get a touchdown out of it. Obviously, the only touchdown pass went to Grayton Gannon, which was that first quarter 4-yarder, which is nice to see him getting a little involved. He only had one other catch. But Graham Gehring, Jack Smith were the only other two receptions. And Bullock has been kind of coming on. I know, obviously, Lawton Ogroski had gotten kind of
and it sounds like he's week to week, so who knows what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
But it's good to have Bullock step up. I think Goring had a nice game last week. I thought Goring had some good opportunities, and Chase just missed him a few times. I don't think it was anything Graham did necessarily wrong this week.
But hearing that, too, about there were some interesting calls. I've heard there were some calls that maybe went SDSU's way.
It was kind of, I don't know. I thought it was okay. I know, was that on the 2-point play or was it the play before where they scored, Kevin? I can't remember because if you're referencing
Kyle, there was another play earlier in the game that there was a little controversy going on, but
Kyle from Splitting Hairs, he had that, but that was right before they called timeout. So we would have probably gotten away with it, but our coaching staff didn't want to risk it and burn the timeout there. Is what I think you're referencing, Kevin, but correct me if I'm wrong. People, that's always going to be a talking point, especially in a higher profile football game, right? But both teams had 7 penalties, 45 versus 60 yards. I don't know. I think whether it was good or bad, you could say that's pretty down the middle in my opinion, but
and usually you would think the home team would get the benefit of the whistle at home, not the other way around. So I don't know that, it's interesting to hear some thoughts that STSU got some kind whistles on the road, and it was a pretty good crowd from the look at it from Youngstown. You could tell the Penguins were kind of feeding off that, especially in the first half.
Reported attendance looks like just over 11, which is about what they thought they'd get. They're trying to build back to what they were. I know some of their podcast guys, and we've gotten to know them, and they're all good guys, and they know they're not where they used to be. But I think you obviously hate to say a moral victory, especially when you got to go to the Alaris Center next week to play a white-hot UND team, but
I would almost say UND had the most impressive win of the week, honestly. Just mainly more because of the fact that UND, that's a game UND very often would,
play
fart
with
down there, would fart away.
Yep.
But I said that too on Twitter. I said that about it when I put out the Illinois State NDSU score. I mean, I don't think Illinois State and Youngstown probably are into much moral victories right now, especially when you're Youngstown and you had a 2-touchdown lead early in your game. But I remember saying to some other people, I'm like, well, we'll find out a lot about Illinois State this week because I know they kind of had that earlier, early in the non-conference, they kind of had a bit of a, I think it was against North. I think it was North Alabama. They kind of had that
double overtime, but that was kind of a weird game too. It was like
with the weather delays and
game because of weather delays and stuff like that.
But I mean, after as let's just call it what it was, beyond the top half of the conference last year with SDSU, NDSU, and USD, beyond the elite teams you had last year, there was a big drop off, and the rest of the conference really wasn't that good.
No,
the conference. I think the conference as a whole is better. Even though one of those elite teams that we had last year has seemingly dropped off pretty heavily in USD. It's a good sign, I think, that even though these were 2 road games for the 2 top teams, that I think it's a good sign they were both given a battle tonight. I think that's a good sign for the league moving forward.
And Southern Illinois, we're starting to get into some of this Valley stuff here, and I guess we can jump back and forth some as necessary too. Southern Illinois took care of business again tonight. It's Indiana State.
I'm kind of keeping an eye on right now because that DJ Williams, he's healthy now. I mean, I think they would have been more of a challenger last year. I mean, if they didn't constantly have their quarterbacks breaking legs and ankles. I mean, they were a mash unit.
It was bad for them last year. Obviously, that's been talked about at length.
But they've got a good coaching staff now. They seem to have their quarterback locked in. We forget 2 years earlier they almost went into Idaho and beat Jason X's team. They're a sneaky team. I think it's very fortunate for SDSU that they're not on the schedule. And again, with UND getting that impressive win today and of course, Northern Iowa comes to Brookings next week, no less. So, we'll maybe get more into that in a minute. But the other half with UND is, they also get both SDSU and NDSU at home.
Right.
And all of a sudden, that game looks like a heck of a lot more difficult for both of those teams, especially looking today at how difficult it was for both the Bison and Jacks in Youngstown and in Normal. And those are rivalry games. I mean, especially obviously you got UND, NDSU, but I mean, anytime it's a Dakota school going against a Dakota school, there's kind of a built-in little rivalry. So
got the old NCC blood boiling there, if nothing else.
Yep. So that's gonna be. I think that's gonna be. And the Alaris Center is always weird. It just even when the Fighting Hawks were when the Effing Hawks were kind of down a little bit here the last 2 years. It's just a little bit. It's just a weird place to go into and play.
2 programs with winning records in that building outside of UND since they moved to Division I, and you can probably guess who those 2 programs are.
And even then, though, I mean, it's like I think there haven't been that many opportunities to play in. Some of those programs that have winning records don't have that many opportunities to play in there. That might be why they have a winning record in there. But it's those will be interesting games, and we'll see. I mean, I think the Jacks caught a bit of a break not getting Southern Illinois on the schedule this year. I'll leave it at that. I'm not saying that the Salukis we're going to come into Brookings and win, or that if the Jacks had to go to Carbondale they would lose, but doesn't. And maybe they'll get. I wouldn't be shocked if they're in the same bracket together in the playoffs. That's probably going to end up happening one way or the other.
I think with the 16-team seeding, it helps a little bit.
Hopefully, it does. Yeah, I mean that's true. That's a good point. That in the previous setup there would have been some way, shape, or form they would have ended up
the same
opposite
side,
each other.
if
Yeah,
not the same quarter.
Yeah, they would have seen each other in the second round or potentially the quarterfinals sometime pretty quick. Yeah.
You got longtime listener Michael Batts chiming in. Michael, we've been missing you around this year.
Oh man, I feel
he's
sorry for that. I
long
put out a
Murray State fan. He says it's sad to see that we're improving so much and don't have much to show for it. And I don't know if you've been catching our stuff after the fact, since you haven't been catching it live, Michael. But Brendan and I have been talking about that, as you know. And obviously, Murray State had USD for D-Days today, which is always difficult. Murray State is better this year. It's tough because they're still 0-4, and they're trying to improve. But I really like Jody Wright. I think Jim Ogles played well. Juwan Northington, I think, would be a 1,000-yard rusher with a different offensive line, and it's unfortunate to see.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of in jest put out a tweet right after I think USD had put up 2 quick touchdowns. I think I just said the PG version of that is basically their booty cheeks right now. And I like Jody Wright too. He's a really good guy, but there's just, I mean, I can't. I mean, going into Vermilion on Dakota Days is going to be difficult, but you thought maybe you kind of wondered where USD was going to be coming off that just difficult loss against the Bison, which is putting it mildly, but to just come out right away and just watch the Coyotes go down the field quick. I mean, Murray's, and to their credit, Murray did get a touchdown, did get within 14-7, so you thought maybe, but it was just, that was never really much of a game. LJ Phillips, who went for, had that 300-yard game against Northern Colorado. He had 224 in this one. And the line play, Michael mentions they have the 58 true freshmen, but you also, I believe DJ Williams, who's at Southern Illinois, actually started at Murray State.
Yeah, so, he was the MVFC Freshman of the Year at Murray State, and then transferred to SIU.
I'm trying to remember, because I think the first time they played at USD, Williams was there. He might have been.
That would have been the year after, because they missed him the first year.
Because it's funny to me, because I remember the first time they played at USD was 2023, and I think that might have been a D-Days game too. And they were actually kind of close with that. That was the year before Jody Wright. That was the Coyotes' first double-digit win year. Yep. They were actually kind of close with them for a half in that game before USD put it away in the second half. They were closer in that game than they were today with what ended up being a quarterfinal USD team. And this one might struggle to make the playoffs. We'll see if they do. But, the 58 is a very young team, but the thing you worry about when they're still going through all these struggles is, how are they going to be able to keep these guys moving forward? You had a guy like DJ Williams, who obviously had a lot of talent, and then he goes elsewhere. I mean, the ones that are really good, are they going to want to stick around and be there to make the progress, to go through the tough times? That's the problem, especially now in the portal era. And I don't know, are you going to constantly have the thing is, are you going to constantly have 50 freshmen? Are you going to constantly have, 30, 40, maybe not 50 freshmen, but you're going to constantly have 20, 30 newcomers a year because you have that many guys exiting. I mean, it's just, it's a constant thing when you have a program that's just trying to establish some kind of footing. And I don't know. I know they brought him in because he has a lot of connections at the upper level, but I don't know. It's a basket, like a lot of these schools in the Valley, it's basketball first. I mean,
and that's why they ended up in the MVFC was, they wanted to go Valley for basketball. I think to kind of circle back to your LJ Phillips point, first off, that kid, don't want to take anything away from him. He's a fantastic football player. But you have to worry about the load they're assigning him this early in the season, and then not to cast glass stones and glass houses. That was kind of both a positive and negative, I think, from our game today. Is I think that was Loffridge's best game as a Jackrabbit, but 25 carries is a lot for a Valley game. And then on the positive, I like them bringing Andrew Gustad in as the fullback, which he is obviously, but between the touchdown against Sac State and now the short yardage carries today, I think he's proving himself dependable, and I think that can be, they bring Gustad in on those 3rd and shorts, get Loffridge a blow, and let him move the chains. But then on the flip side, they gave Basinger a series tonight, which you kind of had to because you don't have Corey Blair's nicked up. Brendan Begeman's going to miss some extended time. And I sent this to our – a little bit. What's that?
Injuries are starting to mount.
So I sent this to our group chat as every time Juice falls awkward out of bounds, I just hold my breath because our running back room is that thin. And, I think getting Begeman and Blair back healthy is going to be big, but, I haven't heard what Blair's deal is. I won't speculate, but Begeman's dad posted some of his injuries on Facebook, and it sounds like that's going to be an extended time thing. And Basinger, when he went in, it was just, you could tell he was young and he's playing in a difficult environment. And I really liked what I saw of him 2 weeks ago against Mercyhurst. So he ran a little different quality opponent, but he can do it. It's just, he's gonna have to grow up quick. And if the Quinn Renfro experiment's ever going to pan out.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering when we're going to see him ever, but maybe he's just not there right now. I don't know. It's interesting with Begeman too, because
and to be fair to Quinn Renfro, he's a redshirt freshman. So
yeah,
we say he hasn't panned out yet, but he's got 3.5 years. Yeah, he just might be a slow developer.
Well, and of course, again, I don't want to sound morbid when we're saying this, but we all know that things were different and Nate White were here, it would be a much different scenario.
100%. He and Loffridge probably have a dang near 50-50 carry split if he's.
Yeah, I hate to touch that. That's kind of
it's real though, right?
Yeah, it's a weird thing because it's kind of a third rail to say anything much about it right now, but and it's also weird because I know we've all kind of poo-poo. There's been some poo-pooing of what's gone on at Washington State because none of those backs are having any success out there.
Right.
But a lot of that's because their offensive line at Washington State is kind of also poo-poo.
No, so, to that point, other than a couple we talked about Hagenswiff, and I'm not trying to dog Sam, but in part I know he can take it and he expects higher of himself as well. I thought as a unit, this was maybe the best game from the Hogs this year, especially when they took over in the second half.
Yeah.
I thought
it went from maybe being the worst to the best.
Right, I thought pass pro was decent. Chase hit the deck once and had to use his legs a couple times, but overall I thought they held up well. And that was one of the biggest things I thought at the beginning of the year where they were struggling with some of that pass pro stuff, particularly Sac State, some of the not odd as in an odd front, but odd as in unusual fronts and stuff they're running. Just some of the communication of who's picking up what, and I really thought they did well tonight. You didn't – if Chase was under pressure, it's because someone lost, and it wasn't because they had free runners like we saw in some of the earlier games.
Well, I kind of to circle back a little bit to I want to point you were making about Loffridge and kind of the load he's taking right now. Looking now here, you are right. I think this was certainly from a touchdown standpoint, this was his best game. He had the 4. It's kind of hard to remember. He'd only been in the end zone twice this year, and both those came in that Drake game. Previous to this, his only other 100-yard game was the Buck 59 against Sac State. He did have 99 at Montana State, so he was, this close to getting 100 there. But this was his season high in carries, 25. But you look. Sac State, 22 carries. Montana State, 23. The one that kind of sticks out is that Drake game when he had the 20 for 83. I mean, obviously it was before a bye week, but they would have probably liked to have used him less.
Say Jackson even said that in post game. He said, that was part of the unfortunate fact of that game being. Obviously, he didn't say it in as many words because a head football coach is never going to say that.
Yeah, you don't want to disrespect your opponent, but
it was an unfortunate side effect of that game being closer than they thought. That was, they probably wanted him on like a 15 carry pitch.
Yeah, and that's what happened. That's what happened 2 weeks later against Mercyhurst. Obviously, we know that game got out, and he only had 11 carries in that game. I mean, he barely played in the Mercy. Does anyone even remember him having much of a carry in that Mercy?
No, James Basinger was the leading rusher, and I think Begeman might have been second.
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things where we're talking about, the guys who are banged up behind him. It's like, it's a little surprising because they've barely played this year when you think about it. But yeah, I mean, that I think maybe leads to hopefully next week, as you look at the next 2 games leading into the marker game, you really hope they take care of business. I mean, look, Northern Iowa, certainly for the people who kind of know the history of Northern Iowa on Hobo Day, we know there's been history there that is not necessarily the most, shall we say, pleasant, because the Panthers have had a way of coming in and spoiling Hobo Days over the years, but this is not the same Northern Iowa program. This isn't the David Johnson era Panthers, and it hasn't been for a long time. I mean, even the team they had in 2019, which is one of the only. I mean, this is one of the only teams that has beaten the Jackrabbits at Dana J. Dykhouse Stadium.
They've actually got a better record in the Dana than NDSU does.
That's stunning. I mean, that should give you the indication right there. I mean, that. This is the team that,
But 2019 was playoffs, not Hobo Day. That was
and that was kind of the funny thing about that, because they
played them.
They came in on a Hobo Day
prior in Cedar Falls and smoked them, and then they came out and won an ugly 9-7 game in the second round of the playoffs.
Well, no, I remember 2019. I gotta look at because now I want to look at this because I remember. I mean, that 2019 season was so weird because, I mean, obviously everybody kind of remembers it more for the game day, but there were so many kind of weird and bizarre things that happened.
The 3 or 4 starting quarterbacks, you had Jabori Gibbs, Keaton Heidi, Keenan Nelson, and I think
same thing happened to tailback too. I mean, you were down to a third string. I mean, it was Mikey Daniel, who was your fullback, ended up being the starting halfback because Pierre Strong was down, and then his backup was down. So, I mean, I remember you can go back to that Minnesota game where they led pretty much the whole way till the fourth quarter, and then there was this, there was a really weird snap that was rolled back to the quarterback, and then ended up becoming a pick 6, and it was just weird things happened. But I remember, I want to see if it was Hobo Day. I think it might not have been.
To answer Jim Poppins' question while you look that up,
Julius
was talking about pregame. The milestone was his first win against a Valley team. I don't know if he even played any at Fordham or not, but that's what he was talking about in his postgame comments there. I was listening to that after the Montana game here before we jumped on.
Yeah, I mean, but no, they in 2019 it wasn't Hobo Day. It was not, but they played Northern Iowa on November 16th. It was kind of late in the year. It was actually
it was like 2 or 3 weeks before they played them and get right away again.
But it was at Dana J. Dykhouse Stadium.
Oh, it was at home. Okay.
Yeah, it was right after they'd actually just lost at home to Illinois State, and that was kind of an ugly loss to Illinois State. And Northern Iowa, I think, was coming in ranked, and it looked pretty good. And you're right. And you're right. They
smashed them.
They took them apart. It was 38-7. I think. I mean, the Yankee brothers, Jaden Jackson Yankee, I think, had one of his first touchdown catches. I remember Don Gardner. I'm looking at the box score now. Don Gardner.
That was kind of Don Gardner's coming out party. Was that?
He had a little bit. He had a scoop and score. Kay Johnson had a touchdown that game. Cannon Nelson got back in and had a touch. So I mean, that was. I mean, you and I was never in that game, But then the next week, to wrap up the regular season, they go down to Vermilion, and this was not obviously the Vermiracle, but they were very banged up. Kind of played a back and forth game, ended up losing by 3 to USD.
4 turnovers that did them in that one.
Yep, and then
there.
kind of shockingly, they still got a seed that year.
Yes,
they were the 8th seed, and UNI ended up. I don't know who UNI beat
whoever in the first round.
And then they came in. I remember the Jacks, I think, scored the first. It was UNI. It was a rematch again, and of course, I remember they played a couple times in the play. They played that year. The last Goddard Winnicky team, the Jacks played them in the playoffs, and they smoked them in the second round in 2017. But I remember State. And now I'm pulling up the box scores because I have to know these things. SDSU got out to a 10-0 lead in the first quarter, and it looked like a continuation of what had happened a few weeks earlier, but they never scored again. UNI got a field goal and then just kind of slowly wore away at them in the second half, and they kicked a field goal with about 2 minutes to go. And but yeah, at that point in the season, the Jacks were basically down to Keaton Heide, who was their third stringer. And they had lost their second string tailback, and it was Mikey Daniel running at that point. So, but that UNI team, as we take that nice little detour, that was probably a team, as Jordan's point, that did not deserve the 8th seed, especially after. That USD team they lost to ended up 5-6, I think. So, it was more than a little shocking that they got the 8th seed. I don't remember who was like directly behind. Look at
the rest of the bracket.
Yeah, you can make a case that maybe it should have been UNI that had gotten the 8th seed, obviously, I guess. But, but that UNI team has been gone. And it was funny, too, because where UNI's thing kind of ended maybe was, that might have been the end of UNI right there, honestly. Because the next time they played UNI was the COVID season, and a guy by the name of Mark Gronowski started for the first time as a true freshman.
First career start.
Yeah, and
his first career win. He started the week before. Or no, that was the
first game. That was the very first game of that weird COVID year. Although, to be fair, they did come in. They did come in 2021 and beat him, and that was a hobo day game too. They did beat him in 2021 with
that. Probably, if we want to go that far down the detour, there's 3 teams that year that probably single-handedly got into the playoffs because they beat SDSU, and UNI is one of them because they got the last team in at 6-5 that year.
Yeah, and that was their last really. I think that was their last playoff team too.
Correct.
They had Theo Day.
They needed to beat the Jacks at home in 2022 when the Jacks won to clinch the MVFC.
Yep.
That they needed to go 2-0 to end the year to probably make the playoffs,
and then Jacks took that walk-off field goal, and then I also remember the SDSU won that game. Then they had that bye week. UNI then went down to Vermilion and just was up like 42-0 in the. It was up 42-0 in the first half. We all thought Bob Nielsen was going to be fired, and then gets that weird vote of support, and then no one would have thought that those programs would go the ways they did based on that game. So it's been but UNI's just had so many problems. They've had funding problems. It's just, although their dome is getting renovated, I know they've had some renovations.
They finally got that approved.
Yeah, I know as much as the Dakota Dome gets bagged on, I've been in the Unidome, and I'm not much of a fan of that one. The turf there is what I get kind of up. Yeah. The turf there annoys me. It looks like it's had coffee spilled on it.
That's putting it far more politely.
Very nicely.
Normally is.
I was very kind of worried they were going to do that in Vermilion. I'm like, guys, don't do that stupid outline of the state thing in the middle. That just looks awful, even worse. So
get the train back on the tracks. Do we have any more thoughts on Youngstown before we maybe jump into some of the conference and national stuff?
Well, I kind of want to look at. I'm kind of curious to see where Youngstown's going to go from here. They were obviously ranked 24th. I would hope, I hope they don't. maybe fall out of the poll. They probably don't deserve to.
I think I had them because I vote in the Red Shirts poll, as you may or may have not have known. I think I had them 24th or 25th this week, and I need to get into obviously more of the games and look for sure what happened, watch some highlights like I do Sunday morning after church, that kind of thing. But
right,
I'll probably leave them there about if I had to guess. Jordan Fink says Chase looked very jittery in the first half. I'll agree. Even second half, he got better. Obviously, made some of those deep shots
too.
Yeah, his first interception, which it was a tip ball. It was high. I don't remember if it was Jack Smith or Alex Bullock. It went off one of their hands. It was a tough ball, but it was catchable. I think overall, because people that listen to Scared Money know I didn't hold up my word this week. I was missed by the numbers twice this week because I've been dealing with some computer issues, but I do have data. I've got series conversion rate data for the entire conference. And Youngstown was actually second in offensive efficiency coming into today. And I think we underestimated them a little bit. And I think Brungard, he is their offense, as we saw. Him and Tom Zach are the engine, but I think they can go as far as they take them. I'm very curious to see what they do in Grand Forks next week. And I definitely think they're a playoff contender.
Oh, and somebody, I don't remember who mentioned this, but they do have a gauntlet coming up. I mean, obviously, they've got UND coming up next week. They go to Illinois State, and I think Illinois State showed something today. They'll get Murray after that at home, which you'd think that's going to be a win, but then right after that they have to go to Fargo on November 1st, Southern Illinois at home on November 8th before they end up with Indiana State. So I mean this again, there's nothing to be ashamed of in taking the loss they did tonight, but those are, I don't know, you have to probably split those games.
With Illinois State and UND at least, if that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to.
What you're referencing.
Yeah, I mean, right now you're. So I mean, you're. Yeah, I mean,
I gotta put the OG up here, even though I don't agree at all, Kevin. Kevin says only the SoCon.
How many guys? Oh Lord, I don't have the exact. Yeah, so I think Mercer gave up their right to have the. I think Mercer kind of lost that argument early in the year, but no, I mean, I think a little more serious note. No, I think, the remaining schedule. I mean, look, they're 3-2 right now after this loss. I mean, you can only probably pencil. I mean, and they also have UNI at the end of the season too. So at least, but even going to Cedar Falls at the end.
That can get weird.
You never know. There's really only 2 more wins you probably can pencil in for sure, which is Indiana State and Murray State at home. So that gets you right now to 4 and that gets you to 5-2.
I think you can give them UNI, and then they got to find a way to beat Illinois State
because I don't think
UND, and they're probably in.
Yeah, I mean,
depending what happens elsewhere.
6 wins, I don't think gets you in. If it's those 6, even though I think they're a good team, I don't think those 6 get you in. I think you have to.
As a Valley team, 8's a lock, 7 you're on the bubble. That's now that we're going to 12-game scheduling. That's kind of what it's going to be.
And the difficult part for them is you also wonder how they're going to come out of this too, because they've got some heavy hitters. I mean, UND plays pretty physical. NDSU, I mean, that goes without saying. They play physical.
Jared Kaminsky looked fantastic again today.
Yeah, I mean, Illinois State seems to play some good defense too now. I mean, they hung with them well. So, yeah, I mean, the one game I would maybe say they have a really good chance at home. Of the remaining games, I think that Southern Illinois game on November 8th is probably the one you really target and say, we got to have that one against the Salukis. But, yeah, I really liked him. I think Brungard's just, somebody was saying Brungard has to be the front runner for the Peyton. I mean, okay, I don't think anybody should be a front runner for the Peyton. It's a pretty wide open race.
Yeah,
Race.
you throw Derek Robertson in there, you throw Cole Payton in there, you throw Brungard in there.
I like McKinley. There you go, Zach. Yeah. Let's stop ducking. Yeah. There we go. There's the talk I was waiting for.
I'm totally drawing a blank, but that wide receiver number 6, even though he's a freshman from Montana, I think you can throw him in there. He caught 10, 12 balls today for 100 yards and a touchdown or two, and he threw a touchdown today.
Yeah. I mean,
and Zach McKinnell says Taron Dickens. He's been playing some really good ball here too. It's like you said, it's wide open right now.
It's kind of become a quarterback award of late. And obviously you can't, I mean, it goes without saying too, Cole Payton, as much as we've, over the years, we made fun of the Cole Payton package over the years, but he's certainly kind of made that role his own now at North Dakota State. But
well, it's almost one of those things now that he's the starter. Maybe he's found his confidence, right?
I mean, yeah, you think so. Now, I mean, last year was a lost season because I think he tore his rotator cuff in the marker. So, I think it was the rotator cuff. I know he suffered the season-ending injury.
I know it was a shoulder injury of some kind. They ran him on 3rd and short on a package of some kind, and they got stopped on 3rd and short and lost Payton for the year. So that was, for those that didn't catch the reference Zach was making, I did. So Taron Dickens for Western Carolina today, he started the game 46 of 46 and ended up 53 of 56. I mean, just insane. Jordan Fink didn't watch NDSU ISU today. Did NDSU play poorly at the beginning, or was ISU up to the challenge?
I think ISU was. It was
a mix of both.
A little mix, yeah.
I think NDSU was riding high off kind of their softer out of conference, and I think Tommy Rittenhouse looked really good. Ty Niekamp played well. That offense was clicking a little bit. The 16 points doesn't really show that, but
I mean, you got to say right away. You know they had the opening drive right away. Get down to the NDSU 30 decision right away when you get down to the Bison 37 on a. You punt and you pin them down at the 1 and you get a safety right off the bat. I mean, that's a pretty good start, but unfortunately, I mean, they were actually moving the ball pretty well. I mean, their first drive, they take the ball, they go about 38 yards, they get to Bison territory, but it works out well for them. They punt, they get the safety, and then off that, they move it down for about 33 yards. They get, once again, they're into NDSU territory, but they fumble. And that sets up the first NDSU. I mean, they were 38 yards from maybe going up 9-0.
I don't know that flips the game entirely, but it makes it a conversation.
Oh yeah, right? I mean, it's still way too early with NDSU, as we've seen time and time again. But if you're gonna beat the Bison, you have to take advantage of every opportunity, and you can't fumble when you have a chance to put them down 9-0, or even if you could have kicked a field goal and gone up, as weird as that score would have been, 5-0. And of course, NDSU takes the ball, marches downfield, gets a touchdown. Now Illinois State did answer right back and get ahead 9-7, and they even got even after that, the Bison missed a field goal, but their defense kind of adjusted, and I think they got one more touchdown the rest of the game. It was 18-16 going to the 4th. But just a lot. I mean, it's a lot against that defense. The defense is really good.
NDSU's defense. So I said it on Scared Money this week, and you probably didn't catch that, Zach. Unless you listened to our stuff, then you did.
I do. I can't get to it all the time, but I do.
So there's NDSU, series conversion rate on defense coming into this week was 50%. And for those that don't know how series conversion rate works, the long and the short is, that basically means there was a coin flip going into this week that when you got the ball, you were going 3 and out.
That's a stat I was not very keen on, so that makes it a little simpler for me. But yeah, I mean, you look at their numbers today. I mean, Illinois State, they basically kind of flipped that on its head a little bit, because
Yeah, Illinois State did a
Illinois
good
State's-
job of maintaining possession, at least in the first half. And I think that's where the game got away from them is NDSU made, not unlike the Youngstown game with Jacks, NDSU made some defensive adjustments, and that kind of got away. Kevin Marshall brings up, it was a great weekend. If you know Kevin's feelings and opinions. This year's Incarnate Word, Rhode Island got exposed. For those that don't know, last night in Rhode Island, if there is a convincing one-score loss, they lost convincingly 28-21 to Brown. And then, as he says, the actual Incarnate Word, who just kind of had climbed back into the polls after their early season struggles, lost pretty handily to the Fighting Dustin Heltons of Stephen F. Austin.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the charts again today, and I kind of going back to your Illinois State point. I'll look at the rest of the FCS too, but Illinois State actually only had 2 3-and-outs today. I mean, it was they were
played well.
But again, a couple of moments where their 1 3-and-out, one of their 3-and-outs, unfortunately, comes at a very opportune time because it comes right after NDSU gets a touchdown to go up 25-16. What do the Bison do?
Drive the length of the field.
Yep, your defense is gassed. Go right back down the field, 33-16. I mean, it's just, it's the typical ND, and they were, of course, pretty time-consuming drives. 5 minutes one, 4 minutes another.
From the little bit I had seen, I still need to go back and watch the full highlights, disclaimer, but from the little bit I'd seen, water is wet. They struggled to cover Bryce Lance today as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be, that'll be the interesting thing, obviously, at the marker game. I mean, I think SDSU's, there was certainly some issues today with coverage, but.
And, I once again, to touch back on that, Isaiah Jackson had played really well the first couple weeks to the point he had started starting over Jaden Oliver, despite the fact Jaden Oliver leads the team in interceptions. And on that last drive or two, once again, not to pick on Isaiah, but there were a couple times he struggled. He had the DPI on the third down there on the eventual touchdown drive. And, yeah, there's room for improvement there. I know we'll get in the film room and learn from it. And obviously, everyone coming into this year, the secondary was a huge question, and not for undeservedly so, but I think people also forgot by trade Dan Jackson's a secondary coach, so myself included. So that kind of sorted itself out a little bit, if nothing else, that way.
Well, and as much as they lost from the secondary from last year, it's like they got, last year's NDSU team kind of burned all those guys they had in the secondary a year ago.
True.
So, I don't know that we can necessarily sit here and say, oh, if they'd kept all those guys, man, we'd be fine. You'd be fine going into that game. It's like a really good and experienced one got lit up by Cam Miller and that crew last year in the semifinal. And I don't even know if lit up's the right term. That was a good game. It just didn't go their way at the end, but you can make a case that obviously that all accounts are going to be settled in the marker game. That's going to settle a lot of things.
Right.
Although, who knows? Again, I'm still in that mode of thinking like, oh, it's all coming down to the games between the elite teams where, again, I think you have to give credit as much as I don't want to sound like an apologist for the things that SDSU didn't do well, because there were things to take out of that game, but we can't keep looking at this with the gaze of, oh, it's all about the Dakotas and everybody else's crap. That was more last year. The teams are better. The competition's better. It's probably a two-part thing of A, the competition's better, and B, let's just face it, the transfer portal and everything that happened in the last year has changed all of these teams. So maybe that's allowed some of them to come back to the pack a little bit as well. It's probably somewhere in between, but as much as the marker game, we want to say that the marker game is probably going to settle all scores and give us an idea of where they both are in relation to each other. There's going to be a lot of business as well once both these teams go to UND. And I know what happened a week ago in Fargo. Crazy stuff could still happen when the Jacks go down to Vermillion because weird things happen in the Dakota Dome in a rivalry game.
They do.
There's a lot of stuff that could still play out. As much will be determined in Brookings and the Dakota Marker game. There's still a lot of stuff that could happen. As dominant as both of these teams have looked at times, I think this week was a good wake-up call to kind of show that the rest of this league is here and isn't just going to sit aside the way it did a year ago.
No, and I think it also showed sometimes the best thing is just finding a way to win. I'm gonna go through. I got my phone. I apologize. I don't have my two screens because I'm on my wife's computer.
Yeah, I'm a little. Like I said, I've been putting my tour off of the cave because I've got one computer that's kind of acting up on me. The other is too.
I'm actually building my first tower this weekend. We got a friend of the show that's helping out with that.
So I know all about this. I've got the phone down here. That's why you see me looking down a little bit. I'm trying to.
But I'll go through some national headlines here, and you stop me or we can talk about anything. Just to start, we already kind of talked about, but Brown 28, Rhode Island 21. Rhode Island had kind of been winning some close games, but had been living off some pole inertia. Villanova kind of been a fringe team. They convincing win over New Hampshire today. Of interest to Jacks fans because of strength of schedule stuff. Not that you get it out of a Pioneer team. Drake blasts Valparaiso in their conference opener today, 41-0. My gosh, lay off the booze guy.
Valpo's just kind of constantly in that.
Right.
They're one I'm always kind of surprised still has a program. I remember there was a year or two ago they almost lost to Southwest Minnesota State. It was like a 1-point game.
Mercyhurst wins by 2 scores over Long Island, who was an NEC front runner and has an FBS win. So that's looking better. I don't know that you can call that a good win still, but Gardner-Webb beats Charleston Southern. They've been getting some votes. We talked about Western Carolina beating Wofford a little bit because of the Western Carolina quarterback Taryn Dickens going 53 of 56 today. Furman's having a little bit of a nice bounce back after the loss to Presbyterian. They beat a decent ETSU team, 31-22.
They're still not getting in the top 8, guys. I don't care.
Probably not.
Nothing is going to change. Inevitably, I know there's going to be a SoCon guy who's going to come at us and say that they belong in the I still remember that. That was a fun discussion in 2024 how somebody said they needed to be ranked or 2023. They need to be ranked ahead of the Jackrabbits, who had one of the all-time best FCS teams.
Right.
And to be fair, they damn near beat Montana in Washington Grizzly Stadium.
That Furman team was not a 7 seed. If they would not have lost,
they should have been seeded higher.
They should have been the 2 seed. They probably should have been the 4 or 5, even with the loss to Wofford.
But don't lose to Wofford. Lose to Wofford. It was, I think they were winless or something along that line.
Yeah, Wofford was like 0-10 coming into that game.
I mean, there was a guy who tried to give me like the quadratic equation for how they should have been ranked ahead of South Dakota State, and it was pretty obvious to everybody with 2 eyes, 2 ears, and a brain that was a generational South Dakota State team that was going to get the number 1 seed if they didn't lose a game. So.
Austin P beats West Georgia 44-30. That was a close game for about 3.5 quarters, and Austin P put it away late. West Georgia is not eligible for playoffs this year, but they've been making some noise in the rankings.
Yep, that's it. West Georgia is going to be here. It's too bad they can't be eligible. I hate that ruling, by the way. I mean, again, I realize the Dakotas had to go through the playoff ineligible period, but, this point in the game, I don't know why we're doing that anymore.
Montana State gets a really good quality win today.
Very good win.
They beat mid-teen, depending on what poll you're looking at, ranked Northern Arizona team 34-10.
Northern Arizona's first loss.
Yep. First FCS loss.
First FCS loss. That's true.
As we talked about, North Dakota hammered Northern Iowa today, 35-7. Again, we haven't talked a lot about with national implications. Tarleton State was in a 4-quarter game with a 1-4 Southern Utah team. They pull away late to win 52-42. Both teams were down to a backup quarterback today. That was one I kind of had eyes on a little bit.
Yeah, that's a situation, and it's interesting too because this discussion we're going to start having a little more, I think. Again, this isn't necessarily a set in stone thing to get to that point I just had, but let's say that, whoever loses, let's say whoever wins the marker game goes unbeaten. Obviously, they're your number one.
Yep.
They're your number one seed. Let's say whoever loses the marker game runs the table as well. One loss. In a perfect world, you might say that they would deserve the number 2 seed.
I think it depends.
Probably not going to happen that way.
I think it depends on what happens with Montana. I think you could see them jumping Tarleton State, but I think it depends on what happens in the Brawl of the Wild and with Montana.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. I mean, Tarleton to me is with having an FBS win with Army is because I just don't know about Montana. If Montana's got enough.
Montana's got a bit of an easier Big Sky schedule this year. That, granted, they should have been challenged today. If we want to jump ahead, there's one other game in between there, but Montana pulls ahead late to win 42-38.
Idaho State's been kind of a pesky team. I mean, they almost beat UNLV in Las Vegas in FBS. So
Cody Hawkins is playing well.
The coach, he's got him playing well. Yep.
As someone who grew up, I don't. Right, wrong, or otherwise, I'm not as much as I used to be. I was happy to see him beat Michigan State today, but as someone who grew up in Omaha and Nebraska fan, I will forever remember Cody Hawkins as getting stiff-armed by Ndamukong Suh on a pick six.
Well, I'm a Colorado State fan, so I think I remember we beat him one year. Yeah, I remember very well the first time we played in Folsom Field in a long time in 2009. They beat him in Boulder, so that was a pretty storming the field in a bunch of CSU fans storming the field in Boulder was a very fun memory. I've not had a whole lot of great memories of CSU football since I left school, so I thank Cody for that.
But as Ron points out, yeah, I was texting some of the other national FCS podcasters during the end of that Montana game there, and it seemed like anything down the seams or over the middle was free for Idaho State. They kept running this follow or double slants play. If you watch enough football, you know what I'm talking about. And it was a free 6-7 yards every time. I mean, Montana didn't adjust. They couldn't cover it. It was bad. Their offense though was clicking this year, and they won them that game.
Well, Montana. I mean, next week they host Cal Poly. I mean, and Poly.
They're playing well. So that was the other game we kind of skipped over that I was going to go over. They beat Sac State kind of I don't want to say convincingly, but it didn't feel as close as the score was last week.
Yep.
And they gave Davis a scare today, and Davis has been a top 10 team.
Yep. I mean, I think that's, it was 34-27. It was in San Luis Obispo. Now,
yep.
Poly has to go to Washington Grizzly next week. That's always
which is tough for anyone, right? Yeah. I mean, that is
there. No pun intended.
By far and away, at risk of making any NDSU fans listening mad, but you've had players come out and say it, that there's nothing that compares to going to Bozeman or to Missoula. There's just not when it comes to this level of football.
And I worked out there too. I mean, it's just it's different. I mean, obviously a bit of a break maybe for them in that it's early October, so it's not, you're not getting the super cold time of the year, but still, it's going to be 24, whatever it is, 23,000 people.
I think it's 28. I think it's closer to 30 now is what Wagra's holds at their latest.
I don't think they've got maybe they made another. Maybe they did make another. I thought it was 24,000, but maybe they made another addition. If it's up to 30, then that wouldn't shock me. I mean, they found more ways to add on to that place every year, but
currently seats 26, but they sell some standing room tickets. So I think that 28 number is pretty close.
And I know they've added I don't know if it's a permanent. I know they've added some facilities there too.
Well, they've got a bubble. They've been having issues with that, but that's
I know Montana State just added an indoor.
Montana State just added permanent indoor, and it's
kind of looks a little like the S-Jack, honestly, that I've seen.
Well, Kevin Marshall, and he also said, in his opinion, Davis is not a top 10 team, and Kevin is one of the top minds in the FCS. But
definitely
he says,
without that back they had a year. His name's escaping me. He was with what was that dude's name?
Oh, Lane Larson.
There it is.
Yep.
Yeah, that guy was magic.
He was something else.
God.
Kevin says Wagris holds just shy of 28, so I'll take that as a win.
Yeah, we were both about. It's in the median. We were both right.
Yep. Yeah, I'll give that to you.
But you look at the rest of the Grizz schedule. Cal Poly. I would still say that's pretty safely in Montana's corner.
They should win, but they'll have to show up, right?
Yeah, they can't. Yeah, they got to get off the bus. Put it like that. The following week, they got Sacred Heart, which is I don't know how that ended up getting in the middle of October, but it's there. The one game that's really interesting at the end and before the Brawl of the Wild, as much as we love to bag on them, October 24th, they go to Sacramento State. That game will be on ESPN. Late kick, I think it's 9:30 our time.
So I think personally, because I've watched a lot of Sac State since they play us too, it's one of those things they play late, so it's kind of easy to catch their games, right?
Yep.
I think they're, especially even from our game, and I talked about earlier some of the stunts they had, and our O-line wasn't gelled yet, but I think that front seven's very good. I think the rest of that team is so-so.
Yeah.
So that could be interesting if they get some pressure on Ayat, because Ayat has just been a rock star this year. As much as he had been maligned for them trying to force him into the starting role and not
people thought he was just a legacy guy.
He's done everything they could have asked for and more this year. Ayat, we talked about how the Peyton race is wide open, and I threw out their freshman receiver, but I think Ayat is right there with him. I think he is part of the discussion.
Yeah, to me, that's the one game on Montana's schedule. If Weber State were still what they used to be, but Weber's kind of fallen off the table. They have to go to Ogden, but that's maybe I don't know. You're right. It's interesting with Sac State too, because they bring in Brennan Mary. Again, this is throwing out all the stuff that's gone on around the president and this weird stadium thing they're now doing. Throw all that to the side for the moment.
So bad. That's a 10-minute discussion in and of itself.
Again, let's throw that to the side. You had an offensive coach in Brennan Marion, and what's wild is kind of the strongest part has been that defense. They've that no one saw that. I know they took some transfers, but no one saw that coming, that they were going to be a strong defensive front.
Jamar Curtis has not looked as good as he did last year at an NEC team. That's been odd.
Yeah.
Tailback.
So, they have it's – and I know they have their go-go. I think they had one other running back. I think he was actually a transfer from CSU, or maybe there's one other running back. I'm not sure.
There is. I'm totally drawing a blank on his name, and Zach McKinnell will probably jump in here and help us out.
Yeah. And then, Zach's got the point about the QBs. Rashada, we saw that. He was nothing in Brookings.
Williams has been better, but I wouldn't call it good. Rashada has been horrible.
Yeah,
and that's Kevin Marshall and I had a conversation on the phone at the start of the year. Is if you're a 5-star guy, but you're on your 4th school, there's probably a reason you're on your 4th school.
You should subtract some stars at a point. And
Damian Henderson. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. He looked good. I think it was the Mercyhurst game. I think I saw him running. Again, Mercyhurst up until the Jacks blew him away had competed pretty well against some of these teams. So,
and like I said, they beat NEC frontrunner Long Island by 2 scores today.
Yeah.
It would not shock me if Mercyhurst wins out and wins the NEC auto bid this year. There's some other teams.
I don't think they're eligible. Are they eligible for the
auto no, they wouldn't be eligible. Right? They're transitioning. Yep.
But they would have a conference title at least,
right.
And the auto bid would go to whoever's in second. But I think that's what makes it even more kind of unforgivable. And I know some Sac State fans are were not happy about this. The ones who hadn't drank the Kool-Aid that had come from the president, and to some extent Marion, who I noticed that cowboy hat disappeared pretty quick after game one. Carson Conklin, like I didn't understand why they ran him out. What was that?
I said even Caden Bennett or Carson Camp are playing better than the two guys they've had this year.
I mean, I think it's Caden. I say Carson Conklin. I mean,
Carson Conklin was there too.
Yeah, I mean
all three of them have been better than Rashada or Williams this year.
Why you run? Other than apparently the hype, which is a lot of what they do at Sacramento State for everything, is just we want headlines, we want to be in the news, you know, that is it. Why you ran Conklin out, which is basically what happened, because he was there with them during spring ball, and then
Bennett was too. I think it was more Bennett hadn't found a home yet, but Bennett was on the roster till February.
I think I heard an interview with a TV station there where Conklin just said something like, the program isn't for me anymore, or something along the lines of it's changed.
That was a big thing. He said it's not the program I committed to, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly what he said.
Why do you run him out when because when you watched how they regressed last year, it wasn't like he wasn't the problem. I mean,
I think
far from it.
And not once again to beat the dead horse, but I think all three of those guys they had in their 2023 and 2024 quarterback room are better than what's in their 2025 quarterback room.
And again, I don't think Williams is playing horror. I mean, Williams is
okay.
He's not but he, especially when you had a guy who it seemed, I mean, again, and they've changed so much of their team, so it is a very different team, but it seemed like that team rallied around Conklin. He's a veteran guy who, again, I know they changed systems. Veteran guy, been there, done that. I mean, and literally, you mentioned Bennett, you mentioned our old friend Carson Camp. All of those guys had experience. I mean, it's just it's mind-boggling. Other than the fact they just wanted the splashy, other than the fact they just wanted the headline of, hey, we just got Jaden Rashada, who's from, oh, look, he was from Georgia, oh boy, we're getting just another notch on our transfer portal class's belt. Well, did the third string quarterback from Cal Poly how many stars did he have? The third string quarterback from Cal Poly just beat you.
And he looked really good in that game.
Yeah. So, I mean, and Garrett's saying that about Colorado. The difference is Brennan Marion didn't have a son who was going to win the, in our case, it would have been the Walter Payton. He didn't have a Heisman Trophy winning son to bring along with him. I'll check that. He didn't have a Heisman Trophy winning cornerback / receiver and a fair quarterback to bring with his son.
I think he'd trade Travis Hunter for either of his sons. So I think that's fair.
And we're starting to see it now with Dion. The Rose is kind of. Even reading some of the stuff in Boulder and Denver. The bloom is off that rose a little bit now that Shador and Travis are out of town. I think people are kind of.
As an FCS and Jackrabbit podcast, FBS, especially P4 ball, is so far outside our envelope. But shame on me. I thought when Dion's announcement about his cancer came out, I thought for sure he was stepping down. I give credit to him, all the credit in the world for coming back this year.
Yeah, I do. I agree, but man, it just that when you kind of see the transfer portal stuff. I mean, you can only do that for so long. You can only build your teams that way for so long, even in this modern era. It's tough.
Highlight Kevin's comment here. Can't wait for the announcement of what Sack is doing next year from the doctor.
For those who missed that, he's claiming they're going to some new conference.
So I simultaneously laughed and rolled my eyes because he said they're going to be FBS next year and potentially a new conference. But on that,
it's not the UAC.
Dallas and I were talking in the group chat. It's like the smartest thing they could do is join the UAC as a football-only member. That would solve a lot of their issues.
But he has said it's not the UAC.
He said explicitly we are not joining the UAC. It's like, dude, joining the UAC as a football only member is literally probably the best thing you could have done given current circumstances. But
kind of the
anyhow,
only thing they can do. I mean, what, you know,
you get to be in the third or fourth best conference in the FCS.
Yeah.
It's still a downgrade, but
and it's a conference that had roots in wanting to go to the FBS.
Right.
With Tarleton State, who wants to, they've been a little more, as has everybody who wants to. I mean, I think SDSU and we know NDSU. I think SDSU has some desire to go to FBS, but they're not broadcasting it on a 10,000 watt channel, right, like Sacramento State.
I think our position remains we are happy where we are, but we would not turn down the right offer. And I think that is 100% the right way to go about it.
Agreed. And you're certainly not going to try and force your way in when you don't have any position at all. It's one of those things where it's interesting because I've kind of wondered for a while if maybe the best way to ever get up to FBS for the geographically challenged in the Dakotas and the Montanas would be, and this was always something they'd kind of talked about under the table back in the D2 days, was just moving the NCC, the willing members of the NCC up. And in hindsight, that's probably what should have happened.
Where would that put Augie today? I always think that's an interesting question.
I mean, a lot of those, they probably would have just gone to the Northern Sun, and some of them would have gone down to NAIA. I mean, I
think Augie would have come with, given the opportunity. Well, maybe not at the time, but
yeah, I mean, now maybe, especially that we know they've had dalliances of trying, I think they're done with it for a while now with the hockey program. But, back then, I don't think they would have had much. There wasn't that much. They are a much different infrastructure now as opposed to then. But, but to my point, my thought is, if no conference is going to take these Dakota schools, just band together and try and put something, the snow belt, as we've lovingly called it. Now, that would be easier said than done, and there's probably a lot of hoops in it. But when you hear the athletic directors at Montana State, South Dakota State with Justin Sell, Matt Larson, they do kind of all say the same things on the record. And it makes you kind of wonder if they've been in contact with each other. So that's always been my thought, is that maybe the best way to go would be just go together, create your own conference. That's not easy to do now.
The NCAA has pretty much said you're not allowed to, but
now maybe that changes in a few years because we think there's going to be a split coming. So I think, and we've heard the Wyoming athletic director kind of hint at that before. But, until those things happen, that's just fun to speculate about. But it's fun to speculate about. Apparently, Luke Wood thinks he can actually make it happen.
He's read too many of those books about you can just speak what you want into existence.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've read a little bit about him, and there's a lot of weird stuff around that program. And I'll give you a hint if you really want to do some deep dives. Some of it's focused around his brother, Josh Wood.
Sure.
Do a deep dive on that, and it's weird. I'll just leave it at that because it gets into their NIL and their Sac-12 thing, and I'll leave that there because that's a different can of worms. But the one thing I'll say with Luke Wood is that he's kind of an academic guy who has claimed that when he was at San Diego, the other SDSU, San Diego State, claimed he kind of got his eyes open to what athletics do for a program, how they can. I mean, I think he was there when San Diego State made their Final Four run a few years ago, and he's a Sacramento State alum, so I do appreciate the guy's charismatic. Maybe has a future in politics. That's kind of where I wonder if some of this is trying to lead him to. But I don't think he really knows how the game is played, and I think he's getting played, or he's trying to play a game and he's not really taking into effect what's going to happen to the school long term, because I don't think he's going to be there that long term for the long haul. But we'll see. I don't know. It's
planning on not, or he's getting fired. It's going to be one of the two. But
yeah, I don't know. there's a lot of people out there. I think they're very short term in their thinking and will probably be gone, whether they're fired or they just move on to their own deal. But, and that's the basketball thing. I mean, their basketball program could be just as iffy because they hired a celebrity there. And
yep, Mike Bibby and Shaq, which that'll be interesting.
Yeah, but the coaching staff has no experience in Division I. It's almost
Right.
It's his son and high school guys and one G League assistant. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
indeed. But I think, I don't know. I don't really buy this. We'll see. I mean, everything he said has pretty much gone exactly the opposite way. My guess is next year they're just going to play a bunch of FBS teams. And
I think that's their best hope.
That's really all they can do. I think the UAC thing would have made the most sense, but I don't think they care about making the playoffs. The weird thing to me is the 2026 deal. Like, everything is just so focused on 2026.
Yeah, there's no future planning.
Like, I don't understand. It makes me wonder if, like, the money runs out in 2026 or they committed something to somebody that we're not aware.
Well, I know part of their whole funding, all this funding they're getting, it was all based upon pledges from boosters. So maybe it's by the end of 2026 that all has to come to be.
Because 2026 was going to be a throwaway year, regardless. I mean,
right.
2026. If the best case scenario had happened, if they had begun their transition this year, they would have been ineligible for the playoffs this year. They would have been in the FBS next year, but they're bowl ineligible. So
either way,
you would have been playing an FBS schedule. You would have been, their hope would have been that they would have been in a conference. Their best case would have been the Pac-12. That would have never happened. I could have told them that. Then maybe they'd been in the Mountain West. Maybe they'd been in the Independent, whatever. But they're not going to be in a postseason, and they're probably still not playing a full FBS. They're probably still having to play one or two or three
right
FCS teams, even as an FBS independent. So, and to think that you're going to get a stadium done in a year, less than a year, on what is already an old site. It's an old expo horse racing ground. I mean, it took Dana J. Dykhouse 2 years to get done.
Yeah.
And that was on an old stadium ground. I mean, you've got to think about all kinds of things beyond just the stadium. There's drainage, there's, infrastructure that's already there. You got to remove that, and you got to build the new stuff. I don't understand the rush to 2026 when that was going to be a lost year for you regardless. So it's kind of fun to watch because it's the train wreck you can't
turn away from.
But you also do feel because there are some good Sac State fans that I've run into.
Yeah, 100%.
And there are people who depend on that for a job. It's we'll see how it turns out. I'll leave it at that.
Well, there's 43 crazy people still listening.
Still online on a Saturday night.
I think to wrap up here, just to keep it somewhat local in the state of South Dakota here, we touched on it kind of adjacent.
Look at the schedule for next week, probably.
We can go to that in a second here. There's a couple big other D2 games this week.
I was at the big one today, yeah.
Yep. Key to the City game. Augie came from behind to win that. And then School of Mines beat Black Hill State in the 140th home state game.
Those the two big D2 rivalry games in South Dakota going on at the same time. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it only would have been put over the top if they had the marker game this week, but
well, thankfully they didn't. If they had the marker game, or if you had USD and SDSU, but thankfully you keep the D1. You don't want to have too many. The D2 schools had their showcase, and that was a rough loss for USF.
It seemed like you were there, so you can speak to it. But from the little bit I caught, it really seemed like they gave that away.
Hey, and thanks for joining us from Albany, Georgia. My God, it's getting near 3 a.m. out there, isn't it? Or no,
2 a.m.
Yeah,
still.
I still sometimes operate on Mountain Time because I was a long time CSU alum, so I'm still kind of sometimes on the Mountain Time zone. But and by the way, I was calling high school games last night, and I got home to watch. I see CSU was on, and I quickly turned that crap off because they were getting their ass kicked by the other SDSU.
Wearing the white hat in Webster, so you probably beat me home by quite a bit.
Yeah, math is hard, Jordan. But yeah, no, SD, Augie. Well, the big thing for them is they were 5-0 coming into the game, but their quarterback Gunnar Hensley, who was just putting up phenomenal numbers, and by the way, you have to say it in this world that we're in now with the transfer portal. He's a guy who might start getting some FCS interest. He, like, as in Valley schools, might be looking at him next year.
I could 100% see that from what I've seen of him.
Well, he's got a pretty serious injury, and he's done for the year. I mean, it's a leg injury. I don't know. I don't want to say what exactly it is. I'm not 100% sure what, but he's out for the year. He suffered it late last week when they beat Winona State, and so they had to. We weren't really sure who they were going to go with at quarterback. They ended up turning it over to a freshman named Lucero, and you kind of thought this was going to be USF's time. USF had lost the last two. Their coach, Jim Gligowski, who'd come from Mankato. He's actually a USD alum. And it seemed like they had control. Now, it was a very windy day. It's still pretty windy outside right now. I can hear it still rattling outside my own place. But there was about pretty consistently about a 25-mile-an-hour wind. It would gust to 35 or 40 every now and then. It was blowing to the west. So if you had the wind at your back, you had the advantage. Second and third quarter, USF had it at their back, but USF had the ball inside the 10 3 times in this game, inside Augie's 10. The first quarter, they were going against that wind and kind of ill-advised. They had a field goal blocked. I wouldn't have gone for the field goal. I wouldn't have. They've always kind of struggled with that, and they get it blocked. So no points out of that. They end up going up 14-3 at half, but just before the half, again, they're inside the 10, and they throw an interception in the end zone. It actually goes off of one of their tight ends, and an Augie guy picks it on the tip. So should have been up probably 21-3. And then right out of the gate, they gave up a 75-yard touchdown run in the third quarter. It's 14-10, but they score the next two. They're up 28-10. You kind of think this game's over at this point because Augie's really not doing anything. They've got a freshman quarterback. USF drives it down to about the 1-yard line. They tried another field goal. It gets blocked again, but there's an offside on Augustana. Moves it from the 2 to the 1. So they're going to go for it on 4th and 1 with like 10 seconds left in the quarter. They try a sneak, and the quarterback trips over his lineman and doesn't get in. If they score right there, it's 35-10, and this game's over. So what happens? They flip the field because obviously Augustana goes 99 yards to score the touchdown, and all of a sudden they get a miraculous 2-point conversion. Then it's a 10-point game. They get the ball back, then they kick a 52-yard field goal, and then it's a 7-point game. The Vikings then threw an interception, but they still stopped them again on a 4th and 1 at like their own. USF got down to like the 40 of Augustana, but then they stop them on a 4th and 1. Augie drives down, scores a touchdown with about 1:18 to go, goes for 2, and hits a reverse to win. And they win 29-28. So they rally from 18 down in the fourth quarter to win 29-28. A remarkable comeback from Augustana, and a game USF will probably feel like they gave away. But one of the better key to the city, one of the more remarkable key to the city games. That rivalry just kind of continues to grow year after year.
Yep.
So that was, that I'm definitely glad that one we're kind of lucky. Each year it kind of falls under its own week. It's never really gone head to head. I don't really remember it going head to head with a marker or a state U game. So it's nice that it gets kind of its own spotlight as opposed to, going up against one of the other big D1 rivalries.
Sure.
But yeah, that was a big one for them. And Augie's 6-0. I don't know how they're going to keep doing this with all the injuries they have mounting, but a big win for Jerry Oshevsky.
Saying Northern Sun's tough, but Coach OJ is a good coach. He'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it a year ago when they went up to SDSU and gave them all they could handle. I mean, that program has come light years from where it was even a decade ago.
Yep. We'll wrap it up here with just looking ahead to next week and any quick thoughts either of us have on any of those games. First one, Abilene Christian at West Georgia. I'll be curious how West Georgia bounces back. I kind of think Abilene Christian will roll in that one, but we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, Valley slate, I'm very curious. I mean, game of the week, obviously we've mentioned Youngstown. And I mean, the games up in North Dakota are the ones that are kind of the most interesting.
Yeah, so SIU at NDSU and Youngstown at North Dakota are the big ones, especially that SIU at NDSU. And I think nationally everyone's attention is rightfully so going to be there.
I mean, we'll find out. I think we'll find out a lot about SIU. I mean, I said that about Illinois State to do today.
I think we did find out that they are deserving of being, the bottom part of the top 10, early teens. I think they're deserving of that ranking. I think we found that out today.
Obviously, I think for SDSU, really need to get a big win next week. This needs to be one I don't know if I expected it to be Mercyhurst or like the Youngstown game a year ago, but for among the reasons, like you mentioned with James Loffridge, they need to try and the injuries are piling up, so they definitely need to try and save some guys if they can.
Yep, they need to get up early and next 2 weeks
down.
Get up early and like you said, keep the hammer down. Other big ones going to be Northern Arizona at UC Davis. Northern Arizona is going to be trying to bounce back here after their first FCS loss with Montana State, and then UC Davis has obviously been playing tough. I think that's going to be a pretty good one to end the evening here.
I wouldn't put this on a big upset alert, but it's one that would potentially end their season. USD and Indiana State, it would be is one that if the Coyotes lose that pretty much ends their season right there.
That's any game they have left, and
I think that could be. I think that's one. If they lose that one, then it kind of takes them off the board for the rest of the season.
True.
You do wonder because I mean, and they haven't won, especially after what happened at Lamar. You're right. There's no such thing as like, oh, this is a gimme game. Otherwise, you would say Indiana State is a pretty winnable one. But I
think the Yotes are in a weird spot where they're going to hammer most of the bad teams they play, but they're going to struggle with the teams that actually know how to play football.
The interesting thing is, if they win the next two, is they got to go to. I mean, they go to Indiana State. They go to Indiana State. They go to UNI. Then they got Illinois State at the Dome.
They're 5-3, but they've got 4 opponents that are currently in the top 15 in the year, which is going to be tough.
Yeah, the question is, if they lose one of these, the question is, can they give Illinois State a game in 2 weeks? And then that maybe puts you back in a position. If you win these next 2 and then you beat Illinois State, then you're in the playoff discussion again. But if you lose these games, then it could spiral back. If you lose one of these next 2, then you're done. Spiral out. And then you're not even. Then you even wonder if they're going to be a factor in terms of like, do they even play spoiler? Do they even, beyond that SDSU game, how much of an effort are you even going to see the rest of the way?
Yeah, I just don't see it. But
yeah, so I mean that's why I say, just for the sake at least of what are you going to see from them, how much are they going to be a factor when they have to play the other teams in the Valley that are also in the mix for a playoff bid. I do kind of want to wonder what you're going to see in those games where, in theory, you think they're going to win and should be favored to win. I don't know. That would be one. The Big Sky as well next week, looking at their schedule. Look at my phone here as well.
Like I said, Northern
Idaho State at Montana State. The Bengals, they can.
I think Montana State's defense is a little better than Montana's right now, or I don't think we see what we saw last week, especially since it's in Bozeman, but never say never.
Yep, no, I agree there, and I think that's. I almost want to give our guy one more shout out. I gotta give one shout out for the SoCon next week, I suppose. although there doesn't really seem to be a great like you said, Furman at West
Furman-
Carolina. Mercer,
West
Mercer.
Carolina is at least interesting with what West Carolina did this week, right?
Yeah. How about this one next week? Mercer at Princeton, 11 a.m.
That's kind of a fun one, right?
Yeah, they must have worked out a little of a scheduling agreement this year with the Ivies, because and they're going to Princeton. That's a heck of a road trip for Mercer.
Yep.
That's a fun way to end it too. Well, thanks, Alex, for getting on with Brendan Brendan ducking out to go have fun.
Right.
With instead of being out later. I'm not sure how many more people are still on this stream, but obviously
we got about 35 left somehow.
Oh
I don't know how many of those people fell asleep with their phone on their face though. So,
well, I guess a lot of people do not want to go out on a Saturday night in the early October, especially when it was unseasonably warm.
Well, like you said,
but,
windy. Even up in Brookings here, I was walking my dog after the game, and I felt like I was going to get blown over. And those of you like you, Zach, that have met me know I'm not a small individual. So,
hey, I'm a big guy, and it was blowing me over today at Bob Young Field. So that'll do it for this week's. I guess Brendan now calls it late night with the Borg. I always call it the Jackrabbit post game FCS post game show, whatever we call it now. Thanks for joining us, and we will be right back here next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Following SDSU's Hobo Day game with Northern Iowa and all the other goings on in the FCS and beyond.
Happy Hobo Week. Go big, go blue, go Jacks.